Well, hey there team, welcome back to the channel and welcome to the overview. Today we're having a look at Avowed. Now, let's just lead with this. I'm not really given to hyperbole. I dislike extreme clickbaitiness or anything like that, but you call a spade a spade. So far, through the course of this year, this is, by a significant margin, the worst game that I've played and covered. Now, this might not necessarily line up with, at a blush, my thumbnail score, which will be 92% at the time of this recording. Consider, if you're new here, I'm doing a new format this year where I'm going to review 100 games over the course of the year, and they're going to be ranked from 100 to 1, right? Given percentage mark. We're populating the list from 100 down, and we're only, 8-9 games into the year? So give it a while and watch this score dynamically plummet. But at the moment, what this means is, it is at the bottom of the list, it's under Civ 7, and I had significant issues with Civ 7. So, a spade, this game is not very good. In not just many ways, in almost every way. Narrative, world design, gameplay. It's got some really glaring issues, and nothing could carry me through to really want to keep going and enjoy it. I had to hang it up early. Credentials, right? Let's be honest. I'll play a game till I complete it or until I hit the 18-hour mark. That's generally the rule because 18 hours is the average time to beat a game. In this case, I've played this for just over about 8 hours, and this seems like a good launching off pace as any. We'll work backwards from the moment where I just sighed and in exasperation just gave up and stopped playing the game. I'd just come into the second sort of main city biome area, I guess you could call it, going through the gates. You know, I suppose if you want to call it pretty design, well designed, you could say that, but yet another static, boring and unengaging city. In execution, a bunch of NPCs just standing there waiting to bark when you walk within range to give you a nothing mission you don't care about. A bounty board covered in bounties that you can just rip up and probably not do because of the way that they've done the leveling system in this, and it doesn't really work and it makes it unpleasant to engage with. But I'll show you this screen, right? I went and talked to this chick. I got my dialogue options, and at that point I just said, no, my tolerance for playing a game that I now understand is just going to copy paste all the systems and design from new city biome to new city biome. I've seen what this game has to offer and I do not want to engage with it anymore. So as you can see, I'm talking to this chick. Essentially, she's trying to give me some nothing side quest to go and drop food off at like a gravesite, right? A ritualistic, pagan-esque. This is something that we've seen before. Who cares, right? And as sharp as I can be, like, I'm not out to grind a axe and be mean about this sort of stuff. I generally will be trying to be respectful and learn more about the world. Like, I'm in good faith. I am trying to engage with this game and understand it. So she wants me to take food and drop it off in the grave. And you can see of the dialogue options I've got, one of them I haven't got unlocked because I don't have a high enough skill, but let's look at them together. 1. It seems that having a meal would be the last thing the dead have to worry about. So, smarmy, smart ass, snarky, hidden grin kind of statement. Now, why is that statement on your screen, Scarlett? Have you been, for the last 8 hours, been a smartass to every character? Like, has that shaped your dialogue options? Maybe there's a dynamism in the background going on. No. This everyman character that you play, your Commander Shepard-esque dude, who's supposed to kind of just be a silent window through which you roleplay your own character through, all of your dialogue options are like this. Everything is a smartass thing. And honestly, the minutes are starting to blur into hours of time where I will sit there and read up to 6 paragraph long, in some case, responses, which cannot help themselves from having some lick of cheeky, smartass. It's a new type of self-insert from the developers that we haven't seen before, and it just makes for an unpleasant experience. I want to be role-playing the character that they told me I was going to be, right? The envoy coming across from this interesting empire, like all the world underneath it, the Pillars of Eternity book that they must be drawing from that was designed by greater minds fucking 10 years ago. That's interesting. The Adra crystals and all that. And you're like an envoy on behalf of the Emperor to come across to this sort of foreign land to see what's going on and deal with this plague. It's an interesting setup because most of it's born from lore already existing. And instead of being like a firm, almost like a Tywin Lannister type character, right? Firm military man on a mission, not necessarily mean or disrespectful, but to the point, and definitely not rude, the game will not give me recourse to roleplay what I envisioned would be the character. And that's kind of an instant fail. From Obsidian, one of the kings of RPGs, how far they have fallen. And so that's your first option, as you might have already read ahead. Second option, and somehow you think these hungry dead are causing the dream scourge. See, that's the closest thing to a reasonable answer. Like, if you read between the lines, it's getting the point across, it's progressing the story and the conversation, but they still can't help but be a fucking smartass. And you can see it's a writer's room full of yes men patting each other on the shoulders saying, God, that's clever. God, that's funny and cheeky, and a little wink at the camera for those guys that love the MCU humor and all that sort of crap. And then your last one is, this seems like a waste of food when the rest of the town is starving. And, all I see there, all you probably see, maybe you don't because you haven't seen 8 hours of this shit, is it treading soft second wave ideological standpoints into the dialogue. Like, why would my character give a shit about whether the town is starving or not in this context? When I'm trying to help a woman that clearly is just trying to appease her pagan gods or her ritual or what, like, she's just asking me to deliver food, and my response is to kind of browbeat her on what seems strikingly like well-threaded, well, depends on how you see well, kind of modern issues from out of nowhere, other than a dialogue box that forced it in. So immersion breaking and just nonsensical. So there's stuff like this all through the game, and it's wild. And I think that illustrates almost to a T my problem with the narrative. Your character is a smartass, a non-stop one at that, and while I said you're coming across as this envoy, and like, I'm the voice of a lot of just normie dudes, right? Dude bros, whatever you want to call it. I'm fairly even-handed, I'm not quite radicalized, but a lot of the boys are getting that way, but I'm still in touch with them. And a lot of them want to be the guy I just explained. They want to be the Tywin Lannister, this fucking rugged envoy representing the Emperor's will, coming across to the wild lands and trying to, kind of punch down on it and sort it out. This game wants to make that worldview the bad worldview. And they want, and it's not even that they're trying to convince you, it's treated as a foregone conclusion. So you never really get the chance to kind of support that position, and if you do, it's treated as a bad choice, and it will be one of 5 choices. All the other ones will be varying degrees of sympathy for the untamed lands and how you coming across and trying to civilize them is wrong. It's an anarcho bloody communist's wet dream of a colony. Everyone wants to live rule. They don't want rules. And in the beginning, I thought, well, this could be interesting. But again, after they're so badly trying to fit this t-shirt onto me that says, I'm with you guys and fuck the Emperor, because that's clearly where this is going, the more I just disconnected with it. So look, that's about all that really needs to be said about the writing. It's kind of terrible, and it's tragic as well, because there are some lore books throughout the world, and you can pick them up, and I played a bit of Pillars of Eternity 1 back in the day, and I found it really interesting, right? These Adra crystals where your souls, when you die, they go on the turning wheel and they come back around, and there's sort of a reincarnation through these crystals in the world, and it's all very interesting. And so the most interesting this game ever gets is when you sniff around into these lore books, which have clearly come out of the designed lore omnibus from a decade ago, from greater minds, and they're picking out select passages to flavor up their world, right? They're stealing from someone else's spice rack to make their shit pie. Anyway, we've got more to cover, and this is already going on. I'll take a brief moment. I really don't like addressing pronouns ever, because everyone's heads just explode. It doesn't matter whether you're left, right, whatever. Everyone just goes berserk. But I'll address this. I'll address let's call it a unique take. Scarlett's take, which isn't what most would say. In the character select screen, you have pronouns. He, she, they. And watch this. I'm going to convey my point, and I'm going to do it without, let's say, having an opinion on pronouns. Right? I don't care whether you like them or you dislike them. It's called an identifier in this. So they've tried to change the name, which is interesting. Could be looking into it too much, whatever. And then there'll be an option underneath, and it's default to switched off. And it's like, will you show your identifier on your character sheet? And to me, this is what I see. I see a halfway measure that is half capitulation and half olive branch in a space where the tide is turning, whether you like it or not, right? Pronouns have run rampant and become more prevalent in games, and people are going berserk, and it is their right to do so, and refusing to buy games, and we're watching studios plummet and go under because of it. And like I said, without particularly having a position, I feel like there were 3 ways to handle this situation, and this way is the worst one. One would have been stick to your guns, right? If you really want your fucking pronouns in your game, go for it, right? Dig your heels in, die on your hill, man. It's your ideology, it's your choice. You know, in a way, I'd respect the hustle for sticking to it. The other way is scorched earth, just tear it all out, get rid of it, and try and go back to games from 10 years past. Those to me are the only real legit options. What they've done in this case is they've shown that they bleed, and so the dudes that are already out for blood saying, nah, I won't buy your game, these same guys aren't going to buy the game, right? I've said that there's pronouns in it. They don't really give a shit what terms you have dictated. Oh, but you can turn them off. It doesn't matter. They're in it. These guys aren't going to buy your game. You're going to lose 1 million sales. It's that simple. So you've given ground to no avail, but more interestingly, this is what I really do see, is that these guys know that this is proof positive that the studio understands the problem. They understand what they're doing is kind of underhanded, and they're trying to find another angle. They're trying to do what I would call second wave activism. I don't know, you can choose your word, ideological insertion, but there is a second degree of it. Hey, the first degree where we said, hey, pronouns are here to stay whether you like it or not, that didn't work. That's blown up in their face. So now they're gone to phase 2, which is being a little bit more insidious. And that's something that I've seen all through the writing in this game as well. Like I said, the framing. It's not a role play. It's not a New Vegas where you can pick one of all these multiple different factions, good and bad, and you just have to weigh it up yourself. You're not told which one's right. You know, Caesar or Mr. Bloody Robot Head or whatever. I can't remember. I haven't played it for a billion years. But the point is you can, you're treated like an adult. Here are interesting choices. Pick your poison. In this, it's not that. This is the ultimate, hold out your hand left and right, pick left or right, except they're holding one hand behind their back. So I want to be the hard envoy from the Empire. Well, no, you can't be that. You have to be the dude that embraces the anarcho wildlands lifestyle of this world. Okay, cool. That's enough. The narrative's compromised. The creativity is compromised. If you're someone that's against all that sort of stuff, you're not going to buy it, and so be it. Keep hitting them with the financial wallet stick until they learn. Whether they go belly up or roll it back, it's going to happen one way or the other. I haven't had a chance to talk about gameplay. At first, the novelty of the combat seemed okay. It is very much the Outer Worlds, but medieval. The moment to moment isn't so bad. It's kind of action RPG, dodge, block, melees and that. Lots of different weapons. A lot of them are on a sliding scale, right? Daggers are fast, don't do much damage. All the way up to, swords are the next one, axes, hammers, spears, whatever, right? So all it really is this sliding scale of how much stun and damage does it do versus how much is the attack animation. So there's a bit there, you got to pick your poison. So you'll do some experimenting until you realize it's kind of shallow. There's a magic system, there's a range system, I'm not that interested in it. Your companions, whatever, they're kind of autopilot. And for a moment there, I was kind of respecing, I was trying to figure out my own novel build. Like, that's probably my favorite part of RPGs. Not necessarily trying to break it, but if I say that, people understand what I mean. You're trying to find where your mind and the way you see systems and turning cogs can be applied into the RPG systems, right? But it is a fairly shallow, much more action RPG. And again, kind of falls over because the system itself's not that deep. So very shallow. Shallow is a great way to put it. And I was trying to come up with, maybe I'll do like a stun build, because the stun's pretty powerful, right? They have a stun bar, you build it up. You get kind of stuck in an almost iframe execution animation with them. So this is how my brain works. This is what I was trying to leverage. The game clearly kind of knows that stun might be a bit broken, and it's gone out of its way to make it very difficult to tune it. There's not a lot in the trees to lean into it. So, that's probably the closest thing to compliments I could say on the combat system. But here's the real problem. They have this weird leveled tier system that's very simple, but is punishing if you don't play the game the way they want you to play it. And the way they want you to play it is to fuck around and grind for mats in the wilderness, not necessarily doing missions, not necessarily even doing side missions, but leveling up your gear so you'll be a high enough level to take on side missions where you take food to people's graves and then progress the main mission. If you say, fuck that, I just want to mainline it and hero mode it, you essentially have these different tiers of your armor and weapons, and that's all it is, by the way. Like, you can wear boots and gloves, but they're not armor, right? Not really. They're not stat line items. They're just, they're more like trinkets, which is funny because the game has trinkets in this. So you essentially have like 5 trinket slots of, hey, you get plus 10% stamina or something. As far as armor goes, you just have one piece of armor, you know, light, medium, heavy, and then you have your weapon or your weapon and shield or whatever. But the thing is, that will have a kind of meta rarity level, sort of 1 to 3 stars, and within those levels they have sub levels, right? Think of it like 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, and then you jump to 2. Now, if you're trying to take on dudes that are at 2 and you're still at 1, you get massive, like, minus 35% to everything. Stats, damage, everything like that. And you get absolutely fisted. And the game is very quick to give you every single side quest and every single main quest, like 3 skulls above where you're at. And if you go out and try and man mode them, you get absolutely fingered. So all that nuance and interesting build craft that you thought you might be engaging with, like I was with the stun system, out the window. It doesn't matter. What matters is you are at the correct level for the correct enemy, and then it's trivial, right? I came to realize that in the fighter tree there is a fists upgrade because you can do unarmed, and it's like, well, how does fists compete with this? Well, it's because if you buy the skill, you can jump to the next rarity. So I did that to shortcut it. And I basically bought the upgrade to make my fists the level 2 equivalent of 3 or whatever. And, just ran out there. I put on a piece of armor that wasn't even build useful. Like, it was light armor, but it happened to be the level 2 that I found. And I went out there and just beat the living shit with my fists out of everything, right? No skill, no nothing. So the only time the enemies were ever really a threat that you could kill you, that could do any damage, is if you were misaligned for loot, and you're going to be that way if you sort of follow the bouncing ball from quest mark. Like, if you just follow the main quest, even if you do a couple of the side quests, you're not going to have enough mats with all the experimenting that you're going to do. Like, say you want to try out wands or an arquebus or whatever, you're going to upgrade these things a little bit incrementally. And before you know it, you're going to spend all these rare mats all over the place. And this is what the game very clearly wants you to do. It wants you to pick one weapon and one armor piece. It wants you to level them up pretty much through the entire game. And it wants you to fuck around in the wilderness grinding for steel chunks and pelts to level that thing up for, half an hour before you do the next mission. Yawn. So that's the gameplay, and it's miserable. Anyway, I know I'm bashing this game. I'm not trying to bash them, but I'm trying to use my vocabulary to explain to you in fair detail. Not only do I think this game is bad and has a lot of problems, I want to convey what those are. And the last thing that I'll sort of round out is the world design. And I think you could argue that it's probably technically well made, but there's 2 things, and it's just so jarring. I feel like comparison is a dangerous thing. We were talking about it in my Discord. People were pointing out all these things you can do in Oblivion and Morrowind that you can't do in Avowed. And I'm like, I want to be as fair as possible. Not all games are trying to be the same. You don't want to homogenize and hold everything to the same standard, and you'll get nothing original. But there is a kernel of truth in it, right? There's no crime. You can't kill anyone that's not quest related. In fact, I was talking to this chick in like a church, and she was not super clearly a bad guy, but there was a hint that she was covering for the bad guys. But because you can't kill quest givers, you can't commit crime, you pretty much can't go and brick your path. It kind of inexplicably just gave me an option to jump down this chick's throat and attack her, and my companions were like, oh, hang on, you sure about that? You sure she's a bad guy? And I'm like, yeah, I am, because the game's letting me kill this bitch. So I just killed her, and I skipped having to do facetious dialogue, so I saved myself a few minutes of monotony. There is a static quality to this game. There's no real blowing wind, the trees aren't moving, or if they are, it's not noticeable. And all of this is covered in this weird, I don't think it's baked lighting, it must be a dynamic lighting system, which is why it's kind of crap. And so, like, on close inspection, some of the, you know, companions, when you look at their face, like the first dude you meet, this Garrick guy, has this kind of green, furry shit going. Even though I hate furries, let's not get into that. But, like, there's something kind of pretty about the detail and the coloring on this dude's face hair, right? But so much of this game just looks disgusting and gross, almost, and it reminds me of the problems of, you know, the Gears of War era games, where everything had this brown, bland, bloody palette over the top of it, and everything just looked like vom. And that's what this looks like. And I can't believe people are saying it looks good. I feel like if they do mods and all that, and they do something about the lighting and just change the whole model, the world might look a lot better. But again, it still looks static. Everyone just stands still. They don't move, they don't emote. All the characters look the same. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm gonna go for it. But like, I've seen a couple of characters that have the, how do I put this? The Shane Gillis brand of Down syndrome, right? The bullet didn't hit them, but it grazed them on the way past, right? The first character, the first chick you meet locked up in a cage, who, by the way, is just an obnoxious, smarmy bitch who just screams at you and is horrible at you, and I refuse to unlock the cage and let her out. The game still let her out anyway, because the game, you know, wanted me to think she was funny. But yeah, she had a touch of the downs, right? She got glazed by a bullet on the way out. And then I found another chick later on that looked almost exactly the same. And whatever black box they're putting all their code into to generate their different characters is tired, it's worn out, and it's probably too sophisticated for these primates to open up and have a look in there and fix the code. So they're just pumping out these samey looking, you know, kind of retarded characters. Anyway, I am starting to get a bit warmed up. So that's probably a good time to wind down. I wouldn't waste your time on this. It's not offensively bad. And I suppose, you know, if you were drunk enough, you probably could get a bit of fun out of this. And if you played it very strictly the way it wants to be played, which is to say, having a sympathetic mind to the worldview of the writers, because they have put this whole thing through this lens. It's not as overt as saying, you know, if you're a card-carrying bloody 30s German, then you're evil, right? That's kind of so last year. That's 2024 being that on a nose with their messaging. This time around, it's a little bit more woven in, artfully or deceitfully, as you might see it. Choose your words. So yeah, if you want to come across as this messiah that's going to save and free the people against the tyranny of the evil empire, and you're very sympathetic to all their rights and anti-establishment position, you probably love it. If you want to fuck around and grind the wilderness and kill 10,000 bears for pelts to upgrade your weapons so that when you go into the next zone, you stomp them regardless of which weapon you use, you'll probably enjoy it then. Absolutely put a podcast on, turn your brain off. There could be value in here, and I'm trying to be as generous as possible. But broadly speaking, I do not recommend it. Keep an eye on the channel, check back in a few months, let's watch this score plummet, because, like I said, it's absolutely not 92%, and I'll be curious where it sits at the end of the year. Alright team, might just leave it there for the time being. I'll catch you guys on the next one.